Who wants a pot of coffee? I just made coffee. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this thing started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Java Chat. It's Coffee with Mike, sitting here with Simone Knego. Really interesting story. You guys are gonna get a real kick out of this one. Simone, thanks for joining me today here on Java Chat.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're gonna, guys, you're gonna like this one. This woman's got a story and a half. So our first section of all of our chats are always, you know, who are you, where are you from, what have you done? Can you do it in that order? Because what you've done is the big one that's gonna get everybody's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have done many things in my life. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my, I went to school for accounting. I have a master's in accounting. I'm a CPA, and I'm also a mom of 6 children. We adopted our youngest 3.
And a CPA?
Well, I don't practice as a CPA because I really figured out what my life is supposed to be. Believe it or not, at 48 years old, I figured out that I'm meant to be a storyteller because we have so many stories, and I feel like it's so important to share them. It is. So back to the piece. So yeah, so I'm a mom of 6. I've been married for almost 28 years. Thank you. And that's another accomplishment. Check that one off the list.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm a CPA by profession, but I'm a storyteller by preference. And that's what I love to do. I wrote a book that came out last October, really talking about our family stories and really and it's all the pieces. It's the ups, the downs, because I think it's really important to share not only your shiny moments, but your struggles as well. Yep. And so that's really and the book is really about inspiration, realizing what you're capable of and recognizing that the things you do every day inspire the people around you, that it matters. What you do matters, you matter. And, again, I'm just an ordinary girl, but I've had these amazing experiences, these extraordinary moments that have led me to a life that is completely extraordinary.
So what led you to write the book?
So I started doing some speaking engagements and through a volunteer role that I had actually. And the more I told my stories, the more people would say to me, wow, you're so inspiring. And of course I'm thinking, me, really, me? And yeah, I mean, if I can impact one person, right? If I can inspire one person or have them see themselves differently, because I truly believe it's not about changing yourself. It's about changing the way you see yourself. We all have it in us to do extraordinary things. We just have to believe in ourselves. So I heard that message many times from people that I spoke in front of. And then I said, okay, fine, I'll write a book. And my husband said, you're going to do what? Okay. I love, supporting when you go on these, left and right turns, but, you're not really a writer. And I said, you're right, but I am a storyteller. So my book is a conversation on the couch. And what's really funny is my friends said when they read it, they're like, we can hear you in our heads. Like, it's so weird.
That's actually the mark of a good writer.
Well, so that actually after he wrote it, and so I was very particular in that I didn't let any of my family, except for one daughter, read it until I was done, because I wanted it to be my perspective, my stories. I didn't want anybody else to say, well, no, that's not how I remember it. And so my husband read it when I was finished, and he said, I have to tell you, same thing again. I was going to support you no matter what. And I was going to tell you that I loved it, but I'm going to be honest, I really love it. Like I, didn't think this left turn was going to go the way I thought it was. It is truly amazing. So, hey, I'll take that one for sure.
Yeah, heck yeah. When the other half is like, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, hold on a second, you said that was a left turn.
Right. And it's the same. It's the same as like when they say, you're right. and I feel like I have to write it down on a piece of paper. Wait, did you just say I was right? So same thing when they said that was awesome. Okay, I'll take that one too.
So
Those are
wait,
two
that goes,
really big.
you're saying that goes both ways. So it happens to guys and women. That's okay. I got it.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
You admitted I was right. What the hell? That's awesome. Well, congratulations on all of that. I mean, 6 children, 28 years of marriage, a book, which having the 6 children and family life and writing a book, that's, I mean, you're talking like really cutting out slivers of time because you have family, you have obligations. That's a big deal. So as you're going through and telling these stories, and by the way, because I have friends that are authors, and of course we've had numerous authors here, and everybody has a different format. But the storytellers, it's interesting. They have this way where they lay things out, whether it's a hero's journey style or if it's just conversations on the couch as yours is, where they're friends and other people can go like, it's interesting. If they do it right, when they meet the author in person, it's like, yeah, I can totally see this book is you. And when you can put that much of yourself into it, it becomes that much more authentic, and that's what everybody's looking for. That's beautiful. What's the title of the book?
It's called The Extraordinary, UnOrdinary You.
I love the title.
Thank you.
That title is, yeah, if that doesn't get people's attention. You said something that was interesting to me, that everything that you does matters. And it's interesting that with everything that's going on right now, there's a lot of, I just had a few people that deal with mental health and stuff. There's a lot of people going around right now that are not hearing that in their own minds.
Yeah, I think we have to remind ourselves of that on a regular basis. I think that what we see in front of us, of course, now that we're some places more than others, completely stuck at home.
Yeah.
But I think that what we see is everything else that's happening out there that we can't, or we don't feel like we're capable of doing. And we are comparing ourselves to that. And I think that that's a really big problem. Like, I think that that's where we start, is that we see things on social media, we see things happening in the news, and we start this comparison game, and it doesn't really get us anywhere. And I think really looking at, and understanding that it's the little things that we do every day. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be the celebrity on stage, giving, a huge talk to 10,000 people. You just need to be you. You need to be you. And it's the little things you do every day, the interactions with your neighbors, the patience that you have when you're on the phone waiting for, someone to help you with something. Understanding that those interactions are so important. And for some people, they might be the only interactions they've had all day. So make them positive, be kind, like realize that everybody is going through something, and you have no idea what they're going through. And we do need to remind ourselves of that.
It's interesting that I've seen, because we all know social media is a great way to go get lost, so to speak, in the noise. And I have different profiles in different places, and I look for the people that are the ones that are out looking to inspire, giving advice or sharing stories and things of that nature to help other people understand what's really going on. One of the things that I try to encourage people, it doesn't matter what they're doing, if they're doing music or if they're doing, like I got sucked into a cosplay community on TikTok, and they're some of the ones that have some of the hardest times when it comes to mental health. There's a lot of really young ones in that community. In that community, I noticed there's a lot of them that have so much downtime that they get lost in their own thoughts. And those thoughts quickly unravel, and they unravel in not necessarily a positive way. So when I watch social media now, and even with some of the stuff that I do in the middle of the fun stuff that I like to do, I'll throw out one of those inspirational ones, just something that tells people, hey, I get it. We're all going through some stuff right now. Some of us are stuck at home. Some of us are alone. Some of us have seemingly nothing to do. But don't let that stop you from being creative. Don't let that stop you from going and telling a story. Don't let that stop you from sharing a memory, something that you may have learned. It doesn't matter if you think it matters or not. As you've already noted, to somebody out there, it does.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You released you said last October?
Yeah, and just in October, so a few months ago. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's been a really interesting road. It's been interesting to see how people react to it, and really having people say to me, "Hey, after I read this, I did this differently." Or and again, my book is not giving you, "Hey, you need to do these steps."
Right.
It truly is. This is about my life. This is what I did. This is why, and and anybody, everybody matters. Like, so when you're making these decisions every day, you kind of have to look at yourself differently and realize that. And the fabric of society is interwoven with all of us, right? It's not just you over there and me over here. We're in this together. And we do forget that. And especially now where we are separated. So it makes it that much more difficult. But for me, it was really a time where, when you talk about, the creativity piece, this is when I said, okay, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to take the time. And I did have to schedule it,
Yeah.
like a regular job. I'm working on
Yeah.
it from this time to this time.
Yep.
And some of, the funniest thing is some of my best moments of writing were in the family room with the chaos of the kids, because that brings back like all of the stories. That's where I feel comfortable, because it's, again, my every
That's the
day is,
zone. That's the
yeah,
zone.
every day is a different amount of chaos.
Sure.
So, and I like it that way. I mean, that's how in this family, that's how we thrive. When it's quiet, you feel like something's wrong.
I have a friend back in Hawaii. Some jokingly refer to him as dial-a-song, because you could literally call him up and go, "Hey, I was just thinking about this," and about 5-10 minutes later, he'd be singing a new song. And it's just, but what I learned about him was that he writes better under pressure. I mean, he's always singing, he's always coming up with cool stuff, but he was literally one of those that he lived a hard life. His family, and I think he's like the only one that ever really succeeded, so to speak, as a musician, as a teacher of the cultural dance and so on and so forth. So that forced him to be creative. But that's his zone, just like yours is the chaos in the family room.
Yeah.
His was the chaos of life. And it's interesting to see how humans find that zone. It could be in the midst of chaos, it could be in the midst of quiet, it could be in the midst of a combo, it could be all kinds of stuff. But as we find that and we drill through it, we have a tendency to, what's the word? We'll just keep it simple. We have a tendency to shine really well in those instances. And the brilliance that comes out of it is now apparent in written form, which is awesome. So in that book, and we're gonna go digging on this particular subject a little bit, because climbing a mountain in and of itself is already an interesting feat. The mountain that you climbed, by the way, it's not Mount Everest, you guys, but it's still pretty damn challenging.
Yeah, don't get too excited.
Yeah, we don't have any frostbite stories.
No.
That said, the mountain that you climbed is named
Kilimanjaro.
Holy crap. First off, why?
Yeah, why? The question that everybody
huge
wants the
question.
answer to.
Right.
Why not? Right. Like, so I had a friend, actually a good friend of my husband's, who had climbed it the year before.
Okay.
He called my husband and asked him, "Are you interested in doing this?" And my husband basically said, 1, 2, 3, no, call Simone. He doesn't agree with that story. Again, this is why I didn't let him edit the book. But
for brevity purposes, we're going to keep this one.
And so they called me and I said, absolutely, I would love to do this. We climbed with an organization called the Live Strong Foundation.
Nice.
So mixing a challenge with philanthropy, to me, there's nothing better. So, we were raising money for the Live Strong Foundation. And, was it a bucket list item to start with? No. Have I climbed anything before? No. Have I gone camping? Yeah, a few times. So why not? So
I'm sure this camping was a little different.
quite a bit different. And there's no portable heaters, that's for sure.
Oh, jeez.
But it was truly a life-changing experience for me, as is everything that I do on a regular basis. Like the interactions I have with people, like those are life-changing, right? Like the
Yeah.
conversations,
Yeah.
those things, kind of change my mindset on so
Sure.
many things. And so I traveled with 16 perfect strangers. And talk about figuring out a person, by going on a first date. Like you're going on a first date, climbing a mountain. It's really, really an interesting piece. Obviously it wasn't a first date, but like you're clear that up for my husband. He's
Yeah,
gonna hear
right.
first date. No, but like really to be there for the same purpose. Like obviously this is a challenge. We're challenging ourselves. We're doing, something for an organization. And how do you work together with a group of people that nothing about, and talk about a lesson in leadership, right? Like you're figuring out, you can't go back to your bedroom or your office. Like you're now here, right? So you're figuring out how to work with these people, to be able to finish your challenge, which is to make it to the top. And are we making it as a team? Are we, do we, okay, we know what our goal is, but when we hit a snag, what do we do? And so those were all the kind of discussions that you have, like you would with a normal team, like, okay, if X happens, what are we going to do? Or if, Y happens, what are we going to do? And, really was such a, you never knew what to expect each day, and to see like how everybody did work together. And if someone was struggling, someone else would help with part of their pack, or, and really sharing these experiences that you wouldn't have in any other realm. So it was really something that changed my world. It changed my family's world, seeing, and I think that's really important too, because I've had some people say to me, well, wow, as a mom of 6, like you really think like moms are always so selfless. Like this seems like a piece, and this wasn't a negative comment. She just said, it seems a little selfish. And I was like, absolutely. But you know how important that is? Like we have to take time for ourselves. And what a better lesson. I can't imagine a better lesson for my kids to learn, that if you put your mind to something, you can absolutely do it. Am I a climber? No. Am I a hiker? No. Do I love challenges? Absolutely. Do it. So
16 new friends later.
yeah.
And probably six very inspired children going, my mom's a badass. I can just imagine, my mom cannot climb your mom. That's just all I can say.
What's the cool, and if you ever play that game, whatever, 2 truths, 3 truths and a lie, something like that. And
Yeah.
then,
Boy, they pick Kilimanjaro as the lion in heartbeat. I guarantee it.
Yes. So the 6 kids confuses people too. If I say I have 6 kids, I climb Kilimanjaro, I wrote a book, and whatever, I make something up, and they're like, yeah, I know. So, but yeah, I think it is really good for my kids. And it's the book thing too, when, my husband said, well, you're not really a writer. And I was like, and, like if this is something, that this is something that I really want to do. And same thing for my kids when they really want to do it.
What was that movie where the guy comes in? It's an old English movie. It's court. Guy comes in and says, I challenge you to a duel, and slaps him with a small little hand and pulls up a big old metal gauntlet and whacks him back and says, I accept. Yep. That's you.
Yes. Challenge away.
Feel free. I'll come back at you twice as hard. That's huge though, because as you said, for your children, obviously, it's inspiring. Mom did this. I really don't have any excuse. My friend did this. What excuse do I have? I'm hoping we get through this. This is going to be fun. My apologies.
No, don't apologize. Allergies are miserable.
They are.
Just
All right, we'll try that again.
Okay.
So you've had a couple of months. What kind of response have you gotten on the book?
I've had a really great response, again,
I would expect, but I mean, like,
yeah,
let's
looking
hear some
back.
stories. Who's been calling?
Yeah. So, one of the funny things that I think it's funny, where I sent it to someone that I know but didn't know really well, and before it was published, and I just said, I wanted to send an advance copy to you to see what you thought, and of course she responded with thank you, and like 3 weeks later she sends me an email and she's like, I have to tell you that typically I've had other people send me stuff and I cringe because I don't want to have to tell a friend that I didn't like their book or that I didn't get anything out of it. So when you sent me that message and then I got the book, I was like, oh, I don't know. And she's like, I was so overwhelmed. The book was fantastic. So I'm not going to cringe anymore when someone sends me an email saying, would you please read it? And I thought that was really powerful that she was like, okay, I'm not going to look at it that way anymore, because it was so good. It really, changed the way I'm looking at the things that I do. And, it's like moments like that. Probably my best moment was with my daughter, who, my youngest daughter. And so she's 13, and we, our 16 and 13-year-old are from Ethiopia, and our 14-year-old is from South Korea. And so, of course, when I first started writing the book, she says to me, can you just not include me in it? I was like, okay, that is such a teenager comment. And I said, well,
okay. Yeah, at first I was like, wait, what?
yeah. And I was like, oh yes, let me write about my 5 favorite children and leave one out of the book. Yeah, that's going to go over really well. And I said, no, I'm going to write about you, and I'm going to be respectful, and I'm going to be, but I think these stories are important to share. I think your adoption journey is important to share. Again,
Absolutely.
if it inspires, one person to change the way they see a family, the way they see, the adoption journey, whatever it can do, I think it's really important to share these things.
Absolutely.
And so, she's like, fine, whatever. She's like, I'm not going to like it though. I'm like, okay, fine. That's good. Like, okay, attitude.
Exactly.
So she got more positive as we, went through it. But then again, I didn't let them read it. So we had a couple of copies that came in. They were sitting on the counter, and I saw her walk up and put it under her sweatshirt and go up the stairs.
Oh,
yeah. And I was like,
the sneak
Rob,
attack. I saw that.
I was like, look what just happened. He's like, what? I'm like, she just took one of the books. And he's like, okay, we'll see how this goes. She FaceTimed me 45 minutes later with tears streaming down her face, saying, I told you I was going to hate it, but I have to tell you, I absolutely love it. I didn't know these stories. I can't stop crying about, Ari's, birth sibling. I can't stop crying about Noah just being a number. You have to read the book to understand what I'm talking about here. But like for me, I was like, okay, I don't need any other review than that from the girl who didn't want me to write about her, for her to telling me that she can't believe how much she loves the book. So
there's nothing like the approval of your children. I've had the same thing happen, not with a book, but I've had the same thing happen with my son, who's 19. Because he's watched me go through struggles. I mean, he's been with me since 2013, and he's watched me deal with some stuff. And for him to come up, give me a hug, or come up and say that, that was good, which is about as much as I'm going to get out of him. But it is the only validation we need as parents.
Yeah.
And if you've told a story that well, yeah, I'm getting the book.
It's such an interesting thing, because I'm, in my life now, it's not about, it's about being a good person in the world. It's about being kind. It's about respecting others. But I don't really need anybody else's approval except for my children, right? Like that,
Right.
that That's the thing, especially when I'm talking about their lives and their stories,
Mhm,
obviously from my perspective and from my
mhm.
experience, but
Yep.
still to have them, be on board with it. And, even it's funny because like they know these, like the older kids know these stories, right? The younger kids, not so much.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but when um, my daughter, who's now 18, she she was the one who helped me, I would be like, what do you think about this word? She's like, nah, let's try this word.
That's
She was
cool.
great. She was great to bounce things
That's
off of.
awesome.
And so once I got the copies in hand, she was up at school. So she goes to school in New York City. And so I sent her a copy and she's like, I just read it in 3 hours and I can't stop crying. And she's like, I know all these stories, but I'm still feeling them for the first time. And I was like, okay, good. This is what I want.
That's the mark of a good storyteller. That is truly when you're able to re-incite the initial feelings that came from those moments. That's a good storyteller. That's awesome. All right,
Thank you.
guys. Well, we're going to take a short, quick 30-second pause for the cause, and we will be back to talk with Simone Knego about what inspires her. Obviously, you kind of heard some of it already, but we'll go dig a little bit more. We'll be back in 30 seconds. And we're back here at Java Chat with Simone Knego talking about the UnOrdinary You. I love that title. I just, it's really cool. Second section, we always talk about what inspires, what things get you motivated. Obviously, challenges of that nature, literally gauntlet challenges,
Yeah.
are some of what gets you going. But like, what are some of the, who are some of the mentors that you've had or people that you've looked up to? Or what are some of the books that you've read that kind of got you going, that's cool. Maybe I need to try that.
Yeah. I would say, really, obviously my children inspire me, but really talking about inspiration, I would say my parents, and specifically I'll talk about my mom. So my
Cool.
mom, she she grew up in rural Pennsylvania. She uh, her mom had a sixth grade education. Her dad worked in the coal mines at a local brewery, and
Wow. Two
she
jobs.
yeah, she knew she wanted to be educated. And I mean, the way she grew up, I mean, they grew everything, they canned everything, they ate everything they canned, like, so, that was how she grew up. She didn't see a library until she was in 10th grade. And that to me is like, when we think about, our lives now and think about the access that we have to everything, right? And not everybody, but I mean, I think like on a, you know, when we're talking about a library, being able to walk to a library and pick up a book, not until 10th grade. And so but she knew she wanted to be educated. So she started working for another family and watching their kids, saving her money. And she applied to college and she got into the University of Pittsburgh.
Wow.
And
Nice.
while she was in college, uh, and probably even before she started college, her goal was really to become a physician. And she worked 3 jobs while she was in college, and she applied to medical school also at the University of Pittsburgh. And she was one of 5 women in her class. This was the late 1950s. And she, worked all through medical school. All 5 women in her class graduated.
That's
And
cool. Awesome.
yeah. And she, practiced until just a few years ago. She's 81 years old now. And
Wow.
she was really, when you talk about, breaking glass ceilings or really not letting anything stand in your way, that was her. Like
Yeah.
trust me, did she have her struggles? 100%. We all do, like, um, but what she looked at in front of her was, all of these opportunities. And so she first started in radiology. And when she got pregnant with my sister, there was no
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
studies
Yeah.
on
That was a
like,
no-no.
yeah,
That was out.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she went back and she was a pediatrician until I think I was under 10. And then she went back into radiology.
Logical shift.
Yes. Yes. I have the
Awesome.
kids. I can practice on them at home. Why not? Right.
Exactly. Come here. I
Yeah.
see that thing leaking out of your nose. Come here. Let me see that. I want to see what's
Yeah.
going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Say ah.
And, she was able to, and even when we were little, she would sew our clothes. She cooked dinner every night. The woman never stopped working, but it's what she loved, right? And she loved us, she loved her family,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
she loved her job. And so for her, it was so important to, you know, kind of do it all. And I want to say I struggled with myself for a while because I didn't have those struggles, right? I grew up with parents who had very high expectations.
Mhm.
And so, you know, was what I was doing, was that like a value because I
Mhm.
didn't have to go through the steps that they had to go through to get to where they were. It's interesting how we do that to ourselves, right? Like no matter what we have in front of us, we tend to have this negative self-talk that makes us feel like we're not enough, or this wasn't good enough, or that wasn't good enough. And
Right, right.
really important in looking back in that we are all enough. We are all more than enough, and kind of really reminding ourselves of that. And so my mom, I would say she was definitely the biggest inspiration. I mean, even now, like if the kids need something like that, even a button. Okay, I can sew a button. Like they might not believe me, but I can sew a button. But they'll call her
I do have
grandma.
some domestic skills beyond telling stories. I can do this.
Yeah, they're like, I'm gonna call grandma because this, I got a hole in my PJ pants, and I'm like, good idea. Good idea.
Let's leave it lay where it lays. It's okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, funny thing, my mom was that for me and my son when she was alive. Anytime something needed sewing or something like that, go get the sewing kit. And of course, she would tell me to do it, even though she was sewing his clothes. And it's just like, go get the sewing kit. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Have him go get it.
Oh, yeah.
But it's nice to hear that's one, and this comes from a lot of my guests, by the way. A lot of them say it was my dad or my mom.
Yeah.
Because they gave so much. And in some cases, it was out of a sense, not just love, not just duty, but more love. They knew they had the responsibility to go with it. But above and beyond the responsibility was, you know what? I love the fact that I have this being in my life. I'm going to do whatever I can to advance them so that maybe they don't have to do what I had to do.
Right.
3 jobs.
Yep.
I know this experience because I lived in Hawaii. I had 3 jobs at one time.
Yeah.
It is what it is, But that's huge when you can step into their shoes and know that you have the same why.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and really looking at them and seeing, I'm the person I am today. Obviously, it started with them. There's been many things along my journey that have, brought me to this moment in time, but they started it all, and they did believe in me. They were, always the ones who were saying, yeah, yeah, you can do that. You should do that. Um, you know, at a different level that I do now with my kids, whereas, I still think that, the societal, what they considered societal norms back then, you know, I wanted to be an actress, they were like, no, no, no. And maybe that brilliance really helped me. But at the time I was not so happy about it. Uh, but
Are we ever when it's our parents? No, until much later in life when we go, actually, that was probably a good
yeah,
idea.
yeah. Thank you for pushing me in that direction.
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
that wouldn't have been too brilliant.
Yeah.
But
You never know. You could have been on Dynasty. We are of
yeah,
that generation,
yes, yes. I think I know, but yeah, you're right. You never know. And I wouldn't be at the place I am today, right? So
True.
that's the whole thing. And
True.
that I think that's really important for us to look at our journeys in that way, and that everything that we go through, the struggles, the ups, the downs, the things that are really complicated, it kind of puts us in the moment. It's really tough. But as you kind of looked back down, the analogy of looking back down from the top of the mountain, you see all the pieces that got you to where you are today, and how important those were to building the human that you are.
Let's go back to that, the mountain,
Yeah.
because first off, I can't remember how tall it is. How high is Kilimanjaro?
19,341 feet.
Okay, and you guys traversed the whole way up, all the way to the summit?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting journey because you start outside of the national park. So so it was 5 days up, 2 days down for us. But if you look at what they say the mileage
Wait.
was.
Hold on. You said 5 days up and 2 days down?
Oh,
Somebody was in a hurry to get off that hill.
Yeah, you're like, mountain.
No,
Yeah.
no brakes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first part, you kind of like rock ski down, like you just kind of slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it was just funny. I was just 5
Yeah.
days up, 2 days down. Holy crap.
I know. Well, you just want to get out of that elevation. You're like, okay, done.
Yeah,
I need to breathe.
Yeah, that's half of it right there is the thinner. So being up there, obviously you said five up, 2 down, but on the 5 up, I'm sure there's a ton of lessons that we're learning. Obviously, you already mentioned having to learn 16 new people, new personalities, new ways of thinking. I'm sure there were a bunch of epiphanies on the way up the hill with all of them, including yourself, going, did we really do this? But beyond that, but beyond that, what were some of the stories that you can remember that were worthwhile as far as saying, yeah, this was a good idea?
I want to say every moment. I mean, I really think that.
Okay, we've only got about 15 minutes.
Okay, I'm not going to tell you about every moment, but no, I really think that one our leader, our team leader, he used to say, you need to save your pennies. Like, don't waste your pennies. You only have certain amount in your jar. And so as you're climbing up, if you're messing around, if you're jumping on that boulder over there and not, and we had, again, I was 42 when I did this, and there were definitely people in their 20s that could jump on every boulder out there. I was just happy to stay on the trail and one foot in front of the other. But, really looking at, that this is hard, and that if you're wasting your energy, it's very hard at elevation to get it back, because you can't make up oxygen that's not there.
Nope.
So like that, and I think that kind of looks at, I kind of looked at that as a story in my life as well, like, about don't waste your pennies, and not in a financial sense, but
No.
don't waste your time thinking about what anybody else is doing. Don't waste your time trying to be something that you're not. Really focus on who you are. So I really took that kind of lesson, with me moving forward beyond just, not wasting my energy as I climbed up this mountain. And I think that was a really powerful thing that I do think about.
At what elevation did that become really apparent for the 20 somethings? Because I'm sure at a certain point they started going, uh-oh.
Yeah. So once we got to the last stop before the summit, so you spend a night at 15,000 feet, and then you go from 15 to 19.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that.
Yes, you could. I believe in you. You can do it. And so that last night, I mean, you're at 15,000 feet. That's higher than any of the places I've been before this. So, really just conserving your breath, and you don't sleep well, obviously. Like it's hard to get, comfortable. It's hard enough to go to the bathroom. People said to me, what was the most challenging thing for you? And I was like, the restroom, because there wasn't one, like figuring that out. How are you doing this thing here? And it's
at
just
15,000 feet where it's biting cold and everything else is going on.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah. It's, the things that you take for granted, right? Don't take those for granted. I was like, ooh, we have running water. But, so that last piece, I think that was kind of like where everybody was like, okay, this is, there was nobody trying to run up that last piece. They were, 1 foot in front of the other, heel to toe, really taking it slow, and really, focusing on as a team, like how we're getting, getting up here, and so another piece of for the inspiration piece is really, my teammates, like, many of them were cancer survivors. My partner for the last piece, he had leukemia. He had cancer in his jaw. He had to have part of his jaw replaced. And this started when he was a child. So I forget how many surgeries. Mike, forgive me if you hear this, but, close to 100 surgeries. I mean, he had so many surgeries. Yeah. And he was the most positive person, that one of the most positive people I have ever met. And to be paired up for him for the last climb, like, there's no way he wouldn't succeed, because he was like, it's just one more step, and, and you look at all the things he had been through. And he had such a great attitude that, it was completely contagious. You were like, his positivity just, there's not for a second I'm going to take a step back and say, oh, I can't do this. No. Yes. Look at all the things he's been through. I can absolutely do this.
Yeah. It's interesting how humans, when put through this thing called perturbation, which is basically taking pressure and becoming something of more value. When somebody like that shows up and you go, bruh, you've been through the ringer and a half, 100 plus surgeries to take care of those things, those health issues. First off, Mike, if you're listening, props to you, brother, because that's amazing that you made it that far. Not the mountain climb, just life. And the fact that you can still hold such a positive attitude in the midst of everything. And in some ways I get it. It's like, well, what else could possibly happen? I've already faced that. Bring it on, kind of attitude. Yeah. It's amazing to me that until we go through stuff like that, how easy it is to run the imposter syndrome that you were describing in the first section. And say, well, I don't matter, I don't this, I don't that. It's like, no, you can't do that. And then do you talk about him in the book?
I do. I talk about, so the number of surgeries is correct in the book, although I think he had another one since then. But he's, he really was such an inspiration for me, as well as my tent mate. So this is one of the cool things beyond the, going with 16 people, you're put with someone in a tent. So you're now sleeping with a stranger in a tent, right? So, and I couldn't imagine, anybody better to have been paired with than Rhonda. She was a breast cancer survivor. She is a breast cancer survivor, and she again, like, totally positive, fun, like, just such an impressive person. And we this was kind of new to both of us. So the first night we were like, how do we do the sleeping bag thing, right? Because okay, I live in Florida, so you're going to go camping and you're happy to use a sheet because it's so hot in the tent. And so we're trying to figure out how to do the strap around your face so that you only have your nose and your mouth out so that you can retain the heat. And we couldn't stop laughing because we're like, okay, seriously, like, how did we not practice this ahead of time? This would have been a key thing to practice ahead of time, how you properly use a sleeping bag. So there were some really funny moments.
I bet there are. There's got to be, there has to be a ton of good stories in that book if you're talking about this. So that last stretch, when you finally get to the top, obviously the view's got to be amazing. But what are some of the revelations that came out of that?
Stop putting limits on myself. I mean, really, like that would be one of the biggest things, is that, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something. We're a big statement in our house is can't means won't. So you don't say can't. Can't means won't. It just means you're not going to do it. But understanding that you can do these things. I'll say it again. I'm just an ordinary girl. I'm a mom of 6. But you put your mind to something and you follow through, and you believe in yourself. And that, I think that to me was a really powerful moment. And then I had a really cool experience was that there's actually 3 summits as you get to so the last summit is obviously the 19,341 feet. But as the sun was rising, we arrived at the first summit. So obviously the view was beautiful. I went to
Absolutely.
take out my cell phone to take a picture, and I had service. So I was able to call home,
At what
and
what
right,
elevation was this?
it's like 17,000 something, 18,000, I forget exactly. But yeah, I had service. I was the only phone that had service. So whoever wanted it took my phone and called home. But I was able to call my kids and say, guess where I am? And they're like, are you kidding me? Yeah. So that was a really expect the unexpected, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Unexpected moment that just, it's kind of like when you're running a marathon and you feel like you have nothing left, and then people start cheering for you, and all of a sudden it
All of a
all
sudden you get
comes
this
back.
you
You
just get
got
this
it.
weird rush of energy. Yeah.
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 So that was that moment.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, guys, we're going to take one more 30-second break, and we're going to talk about what's coming up in the future for Simone, because I'm sure she's got some cool new things on the way. So we'll be back in about 30 seconds. I know there's plenty more that we can talk about. We may have to have you come back or something, because
Yeah, I'm happy to.
the stories are awesome. Yeah, last section, we'll talk a little bit more about what are your future plans, and then we'll talk about where they can find the book and social
Okay.
and all that stuff. Yeah.
And can I tell like a funny story from the book? Is that okay? Because that's kind of okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have time. Good.
Okay.
All right, back in 3, 2. And we're back. Java Chat, sitting here with Simone Knego, talking. We were just talking about having cell service at 17,000 feet. You're only supposed to get that in planes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
On a mountaintop.
it was a moment. It was a moment. It was supposed to happen.
Are you kidding? That's more than just a moment. That was a total moment. Any other fun stories?
Oh my gosh, we have so many fun stories. But if you'll humor me, I'll tell you a really funny story
as long as it's humorous. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Oh, that I. And again, I think it's important to tell these stories because we are human, right? Like we don't just have like these perfect things, because perfection doesn't exist.
Lectures are boring. Stories are fun. And you learn from it. It's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. So we were, my son was away at summer camp. He got, this is not the funny part of the story, so don't think that I'm cruel. He got bit by a poisonous snake at summer camp. Okay.
Oh, where did that go dark real quick?
So we got bit by a poisonous snake at summer camp. I was out of the country on a leading a mission. My husband called me and he said, Noah just got bit by a poisonous snake. I can't tell you anymore right now. I'm getting on a plane to fly up there. Fortunately, it was just like an hour flight from Sarasota to Atlanta. Right. And I'll, call the camp. They'll give you more information. So, then they give me the rundown. So I'm not going to tell this whole story, but basically, he spent some time in the ICU. He had many vials of anti-venom. He did great, and he's
that's good to hear.
And he's not scared of snakes. So that's even more impressive. But So I wasn't able to get to where they were. So we ended up meeting back in Florida. I flew home from the journey I was on. They flew home, and we had to start him in physical therapy right away because, his arm was kind of locked in place.
Yep.
So that next morning we get in my minivan, AKA the moving trash can. And he's having a hard time getting buckled because obviously that one arm isn't working right. And so I'm like, are you buckled? He's like, I'm buckled. So, and I'm looking back at him, and I'm like, I know I cleaned this car before we went on this trip. Why is there popcorn everywhere? And I start backing up, and I'm like, that's not popcorn. I'm like, no, get out of the car. And he's like, why? I'm like, get out of the car. Gets out of the car. I look, it's not popcorn. It's the inside, the foam from inside the seats. There was rat poop everywhere.
Oh no.
So a rat had climbed into the car through the engine block, chewed on
everything,
basically every seat in the car, because it was a feast. I mean, you think about it, there's like in the nooks and crannies, the crumbs and stuff from the kids, the Cheez-Its, the goldfish. And in my mind at first I was like, oh, we'll just put some traps in there, it'll be fine, we'll clean it up. And then finally I'm like, the pest control guy comes out and he's like, I think you might want to call your insurance company.
Yeah.
So, so I call the insurance company and they're like, well, it still drives, right? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, well, why don't you bring it up to, the inspection shop, whatever, and we'll take a look at it. I'm like, no, I am not driving it anywhere because it could be a rat. It could be a family of rats. And if it jumps on my head in the middle of this drive,
This drive will not end well.
yeah. So
it will not
so
even
they,
end.
no, exactly. So they were gracious enough to come and tow it. And the guy takes a look at it and he's like, he's like, I've been doing this for 20 something years. I've never seen anything like this. He's like, I have to look up the costs. And he called me the next day and he's like, we have to total it. And I was like, he's like, I've never said that before in my life, that a rat ate your seats and therefore I have to total your car. So he's like, check that one off your list. And I was like, oh my God, we're so gross. Our car is so gross that, the rat had such a good time in there that they have to total the car. So
oh my gosh.
that's kind of one of our stories that and people are like, oh, you're telling, okay, you have kids, right? Like they get in the car and they eat crackers and it's hard to get in the back and whatever. Like that's life. So
it's part of life.
Yeah.
It's not unusual.
So,
I only have my one son and it's always been, we don't eat in the car. Only because
smart.
Yeah. One is to keep the food off the seats. Two is I'm probably not going to clean it up because or anyways, like I don't want to do that. So, but you're right. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
So
you know what that reminds me of? The rat from Charlotte's Web.
Oh yeah.
Totally that character. I'm in and I'm in deep. We're going right now.
Yeah. And I was like, we're not finding this thing. Like it is.
No.
It's not going to happen.
You may keep your new residence, sir.
Yes. Yeah. We're out. And I was like, so I remember like calling my husband and saying, they had to total the minivan. He's like, only us. And I was like, well, probably not. But according to this guy, only us. I'm like, it's one of those, what's that one insurance company? We are farmers.
Oh, yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. I just gave them a commercial. You can cut that out if you want.
I'm going to call it sponsorship now.
Yes, exactly. But that kind of moment. So
yeah, it's, I can just see I can't remember his name. I can just see the actor too. This is one of those special ones.
Yes.
We've seen it all.
Go big or go home, right?
Go big or go home. Yeah, well, apparently this rat was definitely going big.
Yes, he went amazing. Big. Yeah.
So what's in your future? What are you doing? Are you doing virtual book tours? How are you doing this?
Yeah, so right now I'm doing some virtual events, virtual speaking opportunities, really going on a lot of podcasts, and that has actually inspired me to want to start my own.
Yay!
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I'm going to be, the plan is a friend of mine and I want to start a podcast. So we've come up with the name and we're, really working through the logistical parts of it. So I'm really looking forward to that because again, one of the things I love is, talking to people, learning about people, really, because I think, an open conversation where you share your stories, you learn a lot about yourself and you learn a lot about, the other person. And, my kids laugh because it doesn't matter where I am, I'll start a conversation with somebody, whether I'm sitting at the airport bar or when I sit down on the plane, they're like, oh, here she goes again. I'm like, yes, here I go again. And some of my best stories have come from those moments with strangers where you just strike up a conversation and you learn something really valuable. You learn something from everyone you meet. But, some of those conversations, I just, I'm still in awe,
It's really a matter of who's willing to actually talk.
Yes.
If somebody's willing to just share a moment, it doesn't have to be a personal moment, but just willing to share a moment. Some of the stories, I agree. I've met some cool people on planes.
Yeah, I know, right?
I have a bunch of stories too. This isn't about me. So people can find the book. Obviously, do you have a website?
Yeah, I do. SimoneKnego.com. Obviously
move.
the spelling of it is Knego because nobody ever, yes, it's sometimes
There-
it's tough to figure out the name. So,
there you
but
go.
the good news is I am the only Simone Knego in the world. So if you search me, you will find me.
That is perfect. So
Yeah.
that means that we
Yeah.
can find you on Facebook, Instagram, all those places as well.
Yes, author
Good.
Simone Knego, and then you can find my book on any online retailer, The Extraordinary Unordinary You. And I would love to hear feedback. So if any of your listeners get a copy and want to have a conversation, I'm in, because for me it really is about hearing about other people's lives and an impact that was made, or a realization that was had after reading something like this. So I would love any outreach from any of your listeners, from you, from
Sweet.
everybody.
Sweet. Well, you're probably going to hear from me anyway, because I'm getting the book. When's the Audible come out? That's my question.
So yeah, I know I've had that question a lot.
Some of us only have time to listen to books while we're trying to work. But no, I'd be happy to get a book and dig through it. I just got another book from one of our other guests, so just tell us where to order it. What was the other question I had? When the podcast comes out, please let us know so that we can help promote it.
Thank you.
I'm sure some of my listeners would love to come over and hang out with you over there as well.
Thank you so much.
What's one good solid piece of advice? I was just checking analytics recently, and I got a lot between the ages of 18 and 35 that listened to this, which was interesting to me. But I got a lot of them that listen. What could you give them as a piece of advice, especially when it comes to being that extraordinary, unordinary person?
Yeah, I think that, I had a question the other day where someone asked me, if you could look back at your 18-year-old self, what would you tell yourself? And, it's probably what I've been telling myself for forever, is that, really believe in yourself, that don't put these limits on yourself. Understand that, if you're going along a good path, if you're kind, like all of these things, believe that you can do what you want to do. And you also have to want to do it, right? Like, so don't have someone else tell you what you should be doing. Really want what you're going to be doing, and understand that your family is here to help. And, all of these things that, when you look back and say, where I am today, just don't limit yourself, realize that you're capable of whatever you put your mind to.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Well, we want to say thank you to Simone Knego. Thanks for coming and hanging out, having a cup of coffee and chilling out with me, sharing your stories. Very much looking forward to the book.
My pleasure.
And the podcast when it comes out, for sure. For those of you that are watching us on YouTube, of course, the links will be down in the comments. If you got questions for her, put it up in the comments. She's going to have the link. She'll be able to look at it there, or go find her on her website, SimoneKnego.com. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. If you're not, hit the bell, because that tells you when we get another awesome guest like this popping by. If you're listening to us on any of the now 13 platforms, make sure you download or subscribe on those. If you're listening to us on anchor.fm, that's our home plate. We're happy if you give us some support. Every little bit helps, We always end these the same. We always want to thank you and tell you we love you. We really appreciate you making the time and taking the time to listen to these podcasts. Hopefully you're getting some kind of value out of it. These allergies are killing me. So for Simone Knego and for myself, Coffee with Mike, stay up, stay safe, stay healthy, and live. Ciao for now.
For more information on Java Chat, visit www.javachatpodcast.com. You've been listening to Coffee with Mike on Java Chat. Tune in weekly to this podcast for the next episode. You can also download or subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. A production of Oasis Media Group, LLC. Located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.